وعندما نكرم بالحواس والجوارح والعقل والقلب قبل إكرام اليد.
So when we want to be generous with someone, we need to be generous with our inward organs and our outward organs and our faculties and our limbs, with our intellect and all of our being before we reach out and give something.
وإذا جاءنا ضيف أو أقبل علينا ضيف أو التقينا به في شارع في مؤسسة في بيت في أي مكان نقول نعم.
So if we meet somebody or a guest, we entertain a guest in our homes, or we meet them on the street or some location,
نقول باب القلب قبل باب الدار، أي نفتح باب القلب قبل أن نفتح باب الدار.
So when we find this guest somewhere, we should open the door of our heart before we open the doors of our houses.
لا أنه نفتح الباب الدار وفي قلوبنا شيء.
Not that we should open the door of our house and there is something still remaining in the heart.
فهذه ليس قراءة للقرآن، وبعيدة عن القرآن، وبعيدة عن الله، وبعيدة عن أهل البيت.
And this kind of behavior is far removed from the behavior which is mentioned in the Quran, and it is distant from Allah and is distant from the Ahlul Bayt.
وهكذا عندما نلتقي بشخص في الشارع في المؤسسة في أي مكان.
Likewise, this is the same case when we meet somebody on the street or in a building, in a place.
فنفتح باب القلب قبل باب الدار.
We open the door of our heart before we open the door of our house.
ونزف البشاشة وطيبة النفس عرائس لذلك الملتقى به.
And we extend happiness and an optimistic face to the person that we meet.
فيكون كلنا نور وكلنا بشاشة وكلنا محبة لمن نلتقي به.
And that means that the entirety of our being should invoke or embody love and goodwill and a happy face.
ولا يكون شيء في وجودك شيء فيه عبوسية أو فيه تشديد.
There should be nothing left in your being that resembles frowning or negativity. There should be nothing left of negativity.
لأن الذين يتعملون هذا هم أهل الله.
And the ones who act like this are the Ahl Allah, the people of Allah.
وهؤلاء هم أهل القرآن.
Then they are the Ahl al-Quran, the people of the Quran.
والمراد من قراءة القرآن وإقامة الشعائر وكله أن نتصرف مثل هذه التصرفات.
And the purpose of reading the Quran and to uphold the divine customs and rituals is for this type of behavior.
فالكرم يعطي الرحمة.
Karam, generosity, endows mercy.
وكل إنسان تلتقي به أو تنظر إليه تحيطه بالرحمة.
And each person you meet, embrace them with mercy.
لم يكونوا أكرم من محمد.
There was no person who was more generous than Muhammad.
لأن أولئك كانوا يكرمون بالطعام والشراب وهو مادي.
Those people, they used to give food and drink, and that's something material.
كما هو في مثل حاتم الطائي مثلا.
For example, there was a man whose name was Hatim al-Ta'i in the time of the Prophet.
فإنه كان المعروف عنه أكرم العرب وهو مضرب المثل في العالم.
And he was considered to be the most generous among the Arab, and it's well known all across the world.
وكان من كرمه أنه لا يترك الضيف جائع أصلا.
And it was his policy and his generosity that he used to never have a guest who left hungry.
ويذبح كل ما عنده إكراما للضيف.
And he used to slaughter any animal in order to honor his guest.
وينام جائع.
And that he should sleep hungry.
وكان من كرمه أنه يفدي بنفسه للآخرين.
And from his generosity, he used to sacrifice himself for the sake of others.
حتى يقال أنه في معركة من المعارك.
It was said in a particular battle.
وفي المعركة أعز شيء عند الإنسان سيفه ورمحه.
The most important thing for a person during battle is his sword and his shield, his spear.
لا يوجد في المعركة أعز من الرمح والسيف.
There's nothing more precious in battle than a sword and a spear.
لأنه بالرمح والسيف يحمي حياته.
And because of this, because a person saves his life with these objects.
فكان هؤلاء أعداؤه. قال له أحد أعدائه: يا حاتم أنت كريم ناولني سيفك. فقال له بالمعركة: خذ السيف.
So it was said in a battle time that someone cried out, one of the enemies said to Hatim, he says, "Oh Hatim, you are well known to be a generous man, so be generous and give me your sword." And he gave it.
نعم. ويذكر أنه كان في الصحراء حتى الحشرات والحيوانات ويكرمها ويحميها.
And it is said that even the insects and the animals in the desert, he used to protect them and to be generous to them.
فكانوا إذا كانت حشرات تأتي إلى بيته لا يجعل أي أحد يتعدى عليها، بل يأخذ سيفه ورمحه ويقف يدافع عنها.
So if there was certain creatures that used to come into his house, he wouldn't let anyone attack them or get rid of them. He used to protect them.
فهذا الكرم كان مشهور وأحبه الله وأحبه رسول الله.
And this generosity of his was something well known, and Allah loved it and the Prophet loved it.
ولما مات حاتم وغار هجم رسول الله على قومه على قوم حاتم أسر منهم أسرى وكانت ابنة حاتم.
So when
مع الأسرى.
When Hatim passed away, there was the Prophet when he came, his tribe was taken over, and some of his people were taken as prisoners. One of them was his daughter.
وعادة الأسرى يضعهم في مكان معين، وربما عندهم يكونون نوع من الذلة ويكون نوع من التحقير ونوع من الضعف لأنه أسرى.
So normally the case is that when there are prisoners of war, then they're put in a particular location or they're locked up, and there's an element of dhilla, which is humiliation for those people.
ولكن رسول الله قال هذه كانت بنت حاتم أيضا مع الأسير مع الأسرى.
And the daughter of Hatim was among the prisoners.
لكن رسول الله قال اكرموها لكرم أبيها.
The Prophet said when he found out that the daughter was one of the prisoners, he says, be generous to her, or to treat her well because of the karam, the generosity of her father.
فهي في الأسر ولكن كانت كريمة تعيش كالملكة.
And even though she was among the prisoners, that she was given high respect and to that effect of like a queen.
ولم تكن هي الكريمة إنما أبوها كان كريم.
Even though she wasn't generous, her father was generous.
ولكن نالت الكرم عند رسول الله بفضل كرم أبيها.
But that generosity was extended to her because of her father.
فانظر الكرم كيف يجعل الأسير عزيز.
Look at how generosity can make a prisoner into somebody worthy of high respect.
وأي عزة ليس عند أي إنسان عادي عند رسول الله.
And what kind of respect are we talking about? Not in front of any normal person, but this is with Prophet, peace be upon him.
فالكرم يعطي العزة.
So karam gives respect.
كان الإنسان كريم يجعله الله تعالى عزيزا.
So if a person is generous, Allah gives them respect.
عزيزا في الدنيا وعزيزا في الآخرة.
This person is worthy of respect in the dunya as well as in the afterlife.
وإنما كان كرم أولئك كحاتم وغيره كان كرم مادي يطعمون الطعام والشراب.
But in the likes of Hatim, his type of karam or generosity was material, giving food and drink.
لا يقاس بكرم رسول الله.
It has no comparison to the generosity of Prophet, peace be upon him.
إنما كرم رسول الله بالكرم المعنوي.
So the generosity of the Prophet was a spiritual generosity.
يقبل ببصره وبشاشة وجهه وبعقله وبفكره وبقلبه.
His generosity was that of from his eyes, from the wholesomeness of his face, or looking upon others with a good face, a beautiful face, or is from his intellect, from his heart, from all of his inner being.
ولذلك هو خير من يعمل بالقرآن بل هو القرآن.
So he was the best to apply the Quran, rather he was the Quran.
لأنه يجري القرآن على كل وجوه.
because the Quran was something that was infused in all of his being.
ويذكر أنه من كرم رسول الله قصة.
So it is mentioned from the karam or the generosity of Rasulullah.
فكان رسول الله مع جيشه يقاتل الأعداء.
So Rasulullah was with his army, he was fighting the enemies.
والكفرة بالجانب الآخر.
And the unbelievers, one on the other side.
وطال بهم المكث هم هؤلاء يكونون في المسلمين يكونون في جانب والكافرين يكونون في جانب، فطال بهم الوقت فذهب رسول الله بعيد عن الجيش شيئا ما لكي يستريح.
So they decided that they wanted to have a rest while there was these two armies.
ذهب مسافة بعيدة عن الجيش.
And he went a distance far away distance from the army.
فأراد أن يأخذ شيء من القيلولة يعني تمدد.
So he wanted to take a nap, and he stretched out himself to take a nap.
فالتف له أحد الكفرة من جانب آخر.
And so there was one of the unbelievers who came from the other side.
ومسك السيف ووقف على رأس رسول الله.
Then he took his sword and he stood in front over the Prophet, peace be upon him, with the sword.
ورسول الله بعد بعيد عن الجيش وهو في زاوية لا يراه الجيش ولكن كان نائم، وهذا استغل الفرصة ووقف بسيفه على رسول الله وكان فرصة ليقتل الرسول.
So now, since the Prophet was far from the army, the unbeliever had an opportunity to kill the Prophet. He was standing over his head with a sword.
قال لي الرسول وهو ماسك السيف قال له من لك يا محمد.
So then the unbeliever said to the Prophet, he says, now who is going to protect you, O Muhammad?
فالرسول قال الله.
So the Prophet said, Allah will.
فقال أين الله؟ الآن أنا أقتلك سيفي عندي وأقتلك.
So the unbeliever says, so where's Allah? I have a sword in my hand, I'm going to kill you right now.
فبين هذا الكلام هو يتحرك هذا الكافر وعثر بحجر وسقط.
So between this discourse, this speech, the unbeliever, he tripped and he fell on a rock.
فورا لما سقط فورا نهض الرسول ومسك سيفه ووقف على رأسه.
So then, as soon as that happened, the Prophet jumped up and he grabbed his sword, and now he was the one who was standing over his head with the sword.
وفي هذه الحال وقف رسول الله على رأس ذلك الكافر.
At that time, so he was standing over his head with the sword.
فقال له من لك.
Then he says, now who is going to protect you?
الكافر لا يؤمن بالله فما قال الله.
Since the unbeliever doesn't believe in Allah, he says he didn't say Allah.
قال كرامك.
So then he says, your generosity is going to protect me.
قال أنت حر لوجه الله.
So then the Prophet says that you are free for the sake of Allah.
فانظر الكرم كيف نقذ إنسان وهو كافر نقذه وأعطى له الحياة.
Look how his generosity saved this person, even though he was an unbeliever. His generosity, he was saved by his generosity.
فالكرم يهب الحياة حتى للكافر.
So generosity is something which is given even to the unbeliever.
فمهما تكن أنت مذنب ومخطئ.
However much you are a sinner and you make mistakes,
لا تكن بمنزلة هذا الكافر.
You'll never be at the level of this unbeliever.
فإذا كنت كريم يكرمك الله سبحانه.
So if you are kareem, if you are generous, and Allah will be generous to you.